Sapnap moves his lips against George, his tongue roaming free in his mouth and laying on top of George, pressing him into the bed. They lay the wrong way along the twin-sized bed, their legs hanging off and their heads not quite on the mattress. Sapnap trails his fingers along George's ribs, slipping his shirt up and off over his head, tossing it across the room. George smiles into the kiss and grazes his teeth along Sap's tongue. George inhales sharply when Sapnap sticks a hand down his pants, cupping his crotch through the underwear. George lets his hands wander Sapnap's back, trailing up and down, sending shivers through Sapnap. And then rough hands grip his wrists from behind, forcing them to lay flat on the bed. George parts his mouth from Sapnap to speak, Sap's mouth tailing down to kiss his neck. Dream. Dream, tie me up, Dream. Dream laughs. You're already a step ahead of me. I like to step under you. Sap moves his mouth back to kissing George, cutting him off. Sap starts to rub his hand against George's crotch. George arches his back and motions to their kiss. Okay. Something clicks from the bedpost by George's right hand, and then he feels something rubber clasped tightly around his wrist. He gives it a tug to find he's been cuffed to the bed. Not soon after, the same happens to his left hand. His arms are spread so far apart it's almost uncomfortable, but not nearly as much as having to press up against Sapnap's kiss so his head wouldn't get pushed down too far. Sap bites George's lip, and George thrusts into his palm. Sap smiles with a kiss. Sapnap pulls his hand from George's pants and pulls them down towards his knees, and then returns his hands roaming George's chest and torso. Dream grips his pants and tugs them the rest of the way off. Dream grips George's left ankle hard, pulling it across the bed towards the bedpost, clapping the same rubber restraints around it and the bedpost. Sap places his knee under George to keep his leg from buckling back in. Dream drags George's right leg out, George moaning with the feeling of his leg stretching so far. Dream walks around the bed slowly, George hyper-aware of each step he makes, Sap slowing their kiss down and moving his lips much softer. Dream stops just behind George's head. He can feel his heat radiating. George opens his eyes to find Dream peering down at him and Sapnap from above them. His blank face slowly turns into a smirk. He reaches a hand down slowly. Then all at once he grips the back of Sapnap's hair, ripping him away from George's face, pushing his head back so he's sitting on his knees between George's spread legs. Sapnap rubs a hand against the spot that Dream has just grabbed and doesn't think twice before slipping off the bed, leaning over it while sitting his knees on the floor, kissing the inside of George's thighs. Okay. Dream trails a finger along George's cheek, his dick twitching. He leans down and places a kiss on both his eyelids, moving his hand to hold his head up so his neck can get some rest. George, your eyes are so pretty, but... Dream trails his other hand along George's face, stopping at his chin and holding it tight. He tilds. I thought it was spelled with a T. He tilts George's head back, straining it. Your eyes, Dream pauses, bringing a finger to rest under George's eyes. They wander. With no hand holding his head up now, and his neck craned back, he can't help but whimper. Sap tugs George's underwear, slipping as far down as his legs will allow, and kisses his navel. Dream? George licks his lips, unsure where this could be going. Dream's smile curves up at the edges more, and then he shoves his pointer finger into George's right eye. George screams, thrashing against the restraints and hitting Sap with his movements. What? Dream! George cries. The pain from his eye burns indescribably hot. Impossible to tell what's going on with the blood flooding his vision. Through his watery remaining eye, he watches Dream's smile turn into a laugh, his face scrunching as cute giggles rack him. Sapnap presses a loop finger against George's ass and slips in and adds another quickly. Sapnap stretches George, his fingers moving around, the discomfort from his legs being restrained so far apart, only adding to the pressure. Dream takes his finger out of George's eye. He cries out. He wants the pain to stop, but it feels so good. Dream puts a hand into George's mouth, parting his lips slowly and then gripping his hand from around his top row of teeth to crane his head back, Dream's crotch in his face. The world seems to be dancing, everything moving and swaying, pulsating. Sapnap parts his finger in George and sucks in a big breath through his nose. Dream unbuttons his pants with one hand and slides his boxers down, just enough for his dick. With George's limited vision, he can tell Dream's hard. Brace, Dream says, and George doesn't quite register until Dream slides his dick into George's wounded eye socket. The squelch alone is almost enough to make him throw up. I'm not going to question that. George arcs his back. Arcs? I think that's a misspell. Anyways, pulling his restraints, feeling that the burning sensation all the way from his head to his toes, George starts to scream, and George pulls his head down more, his scream tapering off into a whimper. Sapnap takes his fingers from George and stands at the edge of the bed. George splayed on the bed where he has to lean himself over the edge to fuck him. Sapnap's dick slips into George with no friction, and his mouth closes around Dream's fingers. Bite me if you want me to stop, Dream says. George smiles and flicks his tongue around Dream's fingers. Dream and Sap's unsynchronized thrusts rock George back and forth to the bed, the feeling of blood sliding down his face, almost background to the euphoria. ... Almost. Dream starts to speed up, pain shooting all through George's body, Dream's jeans rubbing against his forehead. Sap misses the memo and keeps a slow pace, almost cruel. George, you're so good. You feel so good, Dream mumbles. His praises waver off, and he gives one last thrust, groaning and leaning over George as he comes. He pulls his dick out of George's eye slowly, sucking in a quick breath. He takes his hand out of George's mouth, sitting on the ground and letting George rest his head on his shoulder. You did so good. I bet I look so hot with this blood and cum in my eye. You have no idea. Dream leans his head back towards Sapnap. Come on, Sap, you got this, he jokes. Sapnap grunts back. Fuck you, and his pace speeds up now. George arcs his back, keeping it there as Sap fucks him, rocking the bed, and his head resting on Dream's shoulder. Dream pastes a kiss on George's forehead when he turns his head towards Dream's neck. Sapnap moans with each thrust pulling out as he comes, and he doesn't have to clean the cum from George's eye and ass. He takes a moment to regain his breath, then climbs onto the bed next to George. He lays next to him for a few moments, places a kiss against his neck, and then reaching over to ruffle Dream's hair. He moves again back to the side of the bed and kisses George's thighs, tailing his tongue up to George dick. Okay, there's a few misspellings here, but oh, that's fine. I don't really care. He smiles up to George and then takes his dick to his mouth. Sapnap bobs his head, his tongue passing over the tip, and George throws his head back, his sore neck and shoulders protesting. Dream smiles at them, moving, so he holds George's head in his hands and kisses him upside down. Sap's warm mouth sending pleasure through George's body, adding just enough to the pain to send him spinning. Dream's teeth grave George's lower lip, and he thrusts into Sap's mouth. Sapnap gags for a second before continuing. George curls his toes as he comes, Sapnap getting no warning and gagging for a moment, swallowing as best he can. Sapnap pulls off George, undoing the restraints from George's ankles and hands, while Dream continues to kiss him. You're cleaning his eye up, Sapnap says, helping George's sore legs back together on the bed. Dream lets go of George, helping his into a position laying the right way on the tiny bed, of course.